some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
You're with GB News and our top story tonight. Brussels has increased its terror threat level to the maximum tonight after 2 people were shot dead and 1 person was wounded, with the Belgian authorities calling it a terrorist attack. Victims are thought to have been Swedish football fans visiting Brussels for their team's Euro 2024 qualifier against Belgium. Meanwhile, football fans were told to stay inside Belgium's national stadium and the match has been abandoned. The Belgian Prime Minister, Alexander De Croo, confirming both victims were Swedish. He's offered his sincere condolences to Sweden. Belgian prosecutors are saying that the gunman is still on the run. Local media are reporting he has posted a video on social media claiming to be part of ISIS, saying he had killed 3 infidels. Forensic teams are on the scene. The gunman is still on the run tonight. Well, here the Prime Minister led a minute's silence in the House of Commons today as he confirmed that at least 6 British citizens were killed in the Hamas attack on Israel last weekend, with a further 10 people still missing. Earlier, Rishi Sunak had visited a Jewish secondary school in North London, reassuring students his government would always support them. The government's also announced it'll provide an extra £10 million in humanitarian aid to Gaza, saying the Palestinian people are victims of Hamas too. Meanwhile, diplomatic efforts to find a political solution to the conflict in Israel continue, with the US Secretary of State holding talks with regional leaders to try to stop the conflict spreading and trying to get aid into Gaza. Antony Blinken was in Israel again today as doctors in Gaza said they were struggling to treat the huge numbers of patients injured in Israeli airstrikes. Aid agencies are saying hospitals are running out of medicines and fuel for generators, with only the most serious cases given access to treatment. Well, the United Nations is warning the humanitarian situation in Gaza is deteriorating by the hour. There was hope twice earlier on today that aid could come through Egypt's Rafah crossing. That's in the south, on its border with the Gaza Strip. There was an expectation at 9 o'clock local time this morning the crossing would open. And then again this afternoon we heard from Cairo that it might open once again, but it still has not opened up, despite thousands massing at the border desperate to get out of Gaza. Meanwhile, in the north of Israel today, terror group Hezbollah decided to fire rockets at Israel. The Israeli Defense Force responding with shelling and helicopter gunships. In the south, though, troops continue to gather near Ashkelon in the south to prepare for the ground assault planned by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The US President Joe Biden said he's confident Israel will be acting in accordance with the rules of war. There must be, though, he said, a path to a Palestinian state, and he warned Iran not to get involved. Well, here at home, hundreds of demonstrators gathered outside the BBC's London headquarters tonight to protest against the corporation's editorial stance on Hamas. The corporation is facing backlash from the public and Jewish groups for calling Hamas militants instead of terrorists. The crowd, supported by the National Jewish Assembly, chanted "BBC, shame on you," with placards reading, "If the king calls Hamas terrorists, so can you." The BBC issued a statement saying it takes the use of language very seriously. Pro-Palestinian activists have also criticised the BBC, covering its headquarters in red paint on Saturday. You're with GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans. Tonight I'm joined by Josh Howie and Leo Kearse. Good evening, gentlemen. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Excellent. Right, well, let's crack on with it then. The Daily Mail kick us off tonight with violent prisoners to be let out early. Should be a graphic for that. I'm sure it'll appear shortly. There it is. The Guardian. Gaza humanitarian crisis grows as US bid to ease blockade falters. The Financial Times, US-led push to open Gaza crossing falters as Biden weighs Israel visit. The Times, teenage sisters among Britons missing in Gaza. The Mirror, invaders will face tunnel bloodbath. And the Daily Star, as ever, taking a somewhat sideways view. Let's have a heated debate. Those were your front pages. So we're going to kick off with the Times, Josh. I think, is that right?
Yeah. So, teenage sisters among Britons missing in Gaza. Turns out, 7 British citizens have been killed and 10 have been kidnapped. And these are a picture of 2 of them, a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old, Yahel and Nolia, who are at similar ages to my kids. And they're right now being held by a genocidal bunch of rapist regime, and they need to be brought home, and Israel needs to go in and get them. And all these people who are sort of say, "Oh no, Israel, hold back, stop." It's like, are any of them actually calling for these people to be released? These 150 innocent victims? No, because they're a bunch of hypocrites and they disgust me. Anyway, that's my impartial view. And it's just it's crazy to see we've heard about these kidnapped victims, and to start seeing photos of them appear now. And these are British citizens. It's disgusting. Anyway, that's my take on that.
What would you have to say about that, Leo?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously tragic and terrible and shows the ties that we've got with Israel. And other countries across Europe and across the West have got, missing people as well. There's another story there, 2 dead in Brussels as a gunman goes on the rampage. So this is, partly this sort of backlash from that. There was the Global Day of Jihad, which was a bit of a damp squib. Not to, denigrate global jihad or anything.
No.
Come from me next.
Well, to be fair, they had very little notice, did they? But,
yeah.
I mean, it's interesting that term backlash.
You don't need much notice to...
No, I mean, it's
modern rampages. It's not like they orchestrate planes going into buildings anymore. They just drive a Prius on a pavement or run about with a kitchen knife.
It's interesting, that term backlash, isn't it? Because one reaches for that because there isn't really a very useful term to describe what it really is, which is a continuation of the forward lash, isn't it? It's it's an amplification of the lash.
Yeah.
But in terms of Swedish people, I mean, Sweden has never been involved in the Middle East. Sweden has only just given billions of whatever it is.
Well,
what do they call it?
They've recently had a spate of Quran burnings in Sweden, which probably motivated.
But they've accepted a huge amount of immigrants.
They're Swedish. It was a terrible idea to bring in, culturally very distant people with, some radically different ideas. I mean, if they'd brought in immigrants from Portugal, I doubt they'd be, running around committing terror attacks.
And it seemed to be a very determined and objectively understood programme. Sweden had a famous a government-sponsored information film. Do you remember this one, in which various Swedes explained to the rest of the country that Sweden was no longer going to be Swedish?
Right.
They really did. You can find it on YouTube. They were saying that Sweden is going to change, and what a Swede looks like is not what a Swede has looked like previously.
And that was popular. Everybody was fine with that.
Not terribly popular, I don't think. No, I mean, it is quite chilling. Well, it certainly is now, in hindsight, now that we've seen what some of those people of those new Swedes
maybe
brought
they
with
need
them.
to bring back the old Swedes, the Vikings.
Yeah.
I think they could maybe, if a guy with one of those big double-ended axe things was down there, he could have solved this, or at least chop the guy's leg off.
Yeah.
I don't know if Islamists need more axes.
No, but a Viking.
We've got more Middle Eastern news on the front page of The Guardian, Leo.
Yes, this is looking at the other side of the Gaza crisis, the Israel crisis. So, an intense US-led diplomatic efforts failed to ease Palestinians' plight in Gaza. So they've had intense diplomatic efforts, but they've still got 2 million Palestinians trapped in Gaza under bombardment. Egypt isn't letting them out through the border. Obviously, they can't go out through the border with Israel or through the Mediterranean. And it's almost like a medieval siege. They've got supplies of water, food and medicine all running out, electricity.
Although I think it was a tweet of yours, wasn't it, that explained that Gaza is actually atop an aquifer, that there's plenty of fresh water there if they would just
this
get
whole water thing's a myth. Israel only supplied 10% of the water anyway, and they have actually turned it on down south now that the population is headed.
So that's exaggerated.
But they need fuel. They need fuel for the. I mean, it takes a while to build. Also, the aquifer is degraded. It's been overused because you've got 2 million people sitting on top of it.
Right.
So, and they need fuel for the desalination plants.
Well, oil has been let in as well to power the generators. That's another thing about this whole myth. A lot of it's run on generators.
Are we surprised that Israel has not actually sort of launched an invasion as such yet? I mean, they seem to be hesitating slightly at this point.
The trouble is, it's going to be disastrous for them in terms of casualties. They're going to. I mean, urban warfare is the most, the warfare where you lose the most bodies.
Yeah.
And also, it's going to be disastrous because Hamas are going to make sure that there are the maximum number of civilian deaths.
Yeah.
And it's not as if, I mean, for all the IDF tries to avoid civilian deaths, they didn't have the intelligence to know that this attack from Hamas was coming. So how do they know what buildings that they're dropping bombs on? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
they are in danger of losing control of the narrative once they go in, I suppose.
And I mean, they have had some successes so far in terms of killing some of the higher-ups, the people who planned it and whatnot. But the propaganda is already going out there. I saw a thing, it's had like 1 million views online. It's this woman saying that Israel has now decapitated 10 children, which is, of course, what happened the other side. It's like, Israel's not even gone in yet. And this is the stuff that's been spread already.
I mean, are we seeing... I kind of feel, hence I'm asking the question, this is... I mean, obviously, the Ukraine-Russia thing has been going on for a couple of years and there's been a degree of this, but it feels to me like this has really stepped up the propaganda, the use of AI, the use of malign misinformation. I mean, it's very, very hard to know what is truth and what is... And obviously, there are some trusted sources, but... Even newspapers can be fooled and so on.
Well, from certainly from reporting inside Gaza, the thing is that Hamas totally controls it. So any reporter who speaks the truth, they just get kicked out straight away.
Right.
That's part of why you can't necessarily believe anything that's really being reported at all. Like we saw with the bomb yesterday, that they said, "Oh my God, look, Israel's bombing the people heading down south. The convoy." Turns out it was an IED. But already that lie is spread around the world.
But do we know that it was an IED? Or
it could have been an accident or it could have been an IED. But the point is there are roadblocks further down. They're trying to stop their civilians escaping.
I think there's propaganda on both sides.
Yeah, but it has been proved now. Most likely they've assessed the footage and it's nothing like a bomb arriving. It's a bomb that...
It does feel like you have to read yesterday's newspapers to have any chance of being able to validate what you're reading about. On to domestic news. Josh, the Daily Mail...
Yes, violent prisoners to be let out early. Hundreds of offenders to have sentences cut by 18 days under a Tory government. This was revealed yesterday. But now this is, obviously with the overcrowding, as we're getting within about 500 spaces of left in our prison system, and they're just desperate to get rid of people. Yesterday, they were basically saying that if you've committed a lesser crime, you would essentially get community service. And now they're obviously the other side of things. They're going to be like, all right, you can get out a little bit earlier. Both things obviously undermine any message this government has about being tough on crime. And that's a very bad position to find yourself in going into an election.
I've long wondered whether they shouldn't be offering alternatives to violent criminals. You can serve a sentence or you can experience a chemical adjustment of your hormone levels, which is likely to bring you in line with society's expectations.
Or the Wagner method. You can sign up and be sent to fight on the front lines, and we've got a variety of wars for you now. So.
I mean, it does feel like it's such an old and blunt instrument, isn't it, locking people up? When it starts to fill up, you do kind of think there must be some alternative way with everything else that we can do now to affect people's behaviour. We know how easy it is for TikTok to affect people's behaviour. You would think, there must be some government...
You think punish them by making them watch TikTok?
Yeah, just like Alex in A Clockwork Orange, just they're constantly...
That's basically what TikTok is, isn't it?
Let's finish off with the Daily Star, Leo. And to be honest, I do think this is perhaps, for most of us, the most important and pressing, urgent news story on the front pages.
Yeah, so crunch time as winter sparks family bust-ups. Let's have a heated debate. So 35% of families row over turning the heating on. And 43%, which is more surprisingly, fight about who's left the bleeding lights on.
I will just say this, lights are almost free nowadays. New bulbs, they're virtually free. You can leave them on all day for about a penny.
But heating isn't.
Heating is not free. Yeah, those two things are not the same.
And also, because women are quite often, let's save the planet. But they're always the ones that are first on the thermostat.
They need it to be... Why is that? Why? We will never... It's like
different blood pressures, different blood... But have you turned your heating on yet?
No, I need a thermostat.
Literally last night.
Like me too,
I need a thermostat that can be activated solely by a pair of testicles.
By a 6'4" Scotsman.
That can be pretty long testicles. Stick it up there.
Get out there and toss a cable if you want to warm up. That's it for part one. Stay tuned for part two. We have Rwanda rulings, Ofcom schoolings, and expensive refuelling. See you in a couple of minutes.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans, still with Josh Howie and Leo Kirst. Let's crack on, Josh, with the Daily Mail now. You have precisely 90 seconds to demonstrate why this is or is not a good idea.
Yeah, illegal migrants to be given only 30 minutes to prove they're ineligible to be deported to Rwanda under new Home Office plans. Obviously, we have a massive backlog. The new laws come in. Presently, I think you get about 60 to 90 minutes. That's going to be cut down to 30 minutes. Then you're only going to get 8 days after that to present your case. Obviously, people are protesting, not protesting, but there are people who are criticising it, saying, number one, if you don't speak English as a first language, then that's cut to 15 minutes with the interpreter. Also, if you maybe suffered sexual abuse or some kind of physical abuse, it can be very hard to get like a doctor's report ready in the 8 days. Saying all of that, there is a problem. It needs to be solved. They need to somehow work their way through backlogs.
And honestly, who can concentrate for more than half an hour anyway? I mean, it's like an Edinburgh show or something, isn't it? Trim the fat, trim the fat.
Just edit.
Get to the point.
Well, this is what I think they should do, is just go, do you think Hamas are terrorists? Can you complete this chant from the river to the what?
They don't even need to give them a verbal answer, because obviously that might be a linguistic problem. You can just put a few diodes on them and monitor their pupil size when they're presented with certain images and so on. Do they, because that enlarges if they're aroused.
You've got a thing tonight with hormones in people and electrodes.
All of this biomechanical stuff is available.
You've been watching too much Stanley Kubrick.
And open hotel rooms. So why can we not use it for this?
Yeah. And 30 minutes is ages. I think that's too late. It should be like Britain's Got Talent. You know what I mean? You've got 4 buzzer. Yeah, you can get a golden buzzer if they really like you, or if you're attractive enough. And then like the other two reds and you're out. And it should be the same people as Britain's Got Talent as well.
They would also use the exact same mechanisms, wouldn't they? The heartthrob stories, not heartthrob. Sorry, they're putting the heartstrings. The granny. It was her dying wish that I should play ukulele on Britain's Got Talent. And
I live in Birmingham.
I don't know. Some of those stories are pretty sad. It's quite, it's quite.
Exactly.
If they're using those guys, then that's going to increase some immigration.
At the moment, this has created an enormous amount of work for third-rate lawyers, hasn't it? But actually, what they really should be getting is TV execs, the people who understand how to brief you to get through the first stage of a TV talent show. It's not a bad idea, Josh. I think that could be how we use our days. Leo, absolute scenes as the BBC encounters the sharp end of an Ofcom ruling for a change.
Yeah, how the tide has turned. So number 10 says Ofcom rules don't stop the BBC from calling Hamas terrorists, and points out the corporation used the term about 9/11 and the Bataclan attacks. And it's also, the BBC has also called the attack in Belgium tonight a terror attack. Yeah. Almost as if they're mocking us. But yeah, so the 9/11 and 2015 Bataclan attacks were called terrorism by the BBC. I mean, I suppose the BBC could argue that there's a history of conflict between Israel and Gaza.
Well, exactly. I mean, to play devil's advocate on this, because I am broadly of the view that we should call it terrorism, but I suppose for me the distinction is not does it create terror, was it intended to create terror, because you could certainly lay that at the feet of shock and awe in 2003. That was to create terror in the people of Baghdad. The point is, are they state actors, or are they a sub-state? Are they a non-state? And that is
do they have defined political and sort of plausible objectives?
Yeah, exactly. Are they acting on behalf of and that's the thing. And the answer is no, I would say, but it is a little bit more of a grey area than it is when a man goes on the rampage with a gun in Brussels. Yeah. Hamas hasn't. I mean, there's the Palestinian Authority who reject Hamas, right? But Hamas is within that strip, that Gaza Strip, has a not a democratic mandate as we'd understand it, but you know what I mean? It's not quite like when they are...
They are a prescribed terrorist organisation.
Yes, they are.
Literally by our government. And the BBC saying, oh, no, other TV stations. No, when that attack happened last week, a thing went out here saying very clearly at GB News, they are a terrorist organisation. Because that is reality. And the fact that the BBC are trying to hide behind it, they're trying to say, look, we're just using this to separate fact from fake. Well, so you're saying they're not terrorists? What they didn't wasn't wasn't terrorism. I mean, come on. And then they also sort of reveal themselves. They say we don't want to be perceived to take sides in any war.
Yeah.
Well, what side is there?
But what would you say? I mean, in terms of terror, what would you say about napalm attacks in Vietnam by America? Would you regard that as terrorism? Because that was clearly what it was, right? If by the definition that you're using, the famous picture of the little girl running down, you know, that was terrorism, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can say that's terrorism.
But that wasn't described as terrorism.
Well, I mean, it depends. Were they targeting specifically that little girl? Or is this like a military objective?
It's quite common to sort of target civilian population.
Well, then that's
war. I mean, Hiroshima was against the civilian target.
My gut feeling is that our instinctive idea of what is terrorism, i.e. an action obviously intended to create terror among a civilian population, is not the one that's decisive in terms of whether the word is used. It's the question of under what authority you are performing that action.
Yeah.
And if you are actually at war with another country and then you do that, like, is the rape of Nanking, was that terrorism? You know, there are horrific things have happened. Sorry?
I don't know her.
Oh, don't joke about that.
But yes, it's interesting that, you know, last week the BBC, people were on the BBC on Newsnight demanding that GB News be shut down because somebody said he didn't want to have sex with someone, and this, to me, this is a far greater. This is
well, to be honest, they've also transgressed that particular, you know, the exact same as well anyway, but we'll go back there. Times now, Josh. NHS workers can opt out of their pension schemes, so they might feel a little prick.
Yeah, very good. Alarming rise in staff leaving NHS pensions. I didn't know this, but well, first of all, the number opting out has gone up 67% in 4 years, but what that means overall is we're talking from 3% up to 4.2% of its million members. But I had no idea how generous the pension scheme is, where the lowest paid get about 4 times the amount that they put in, and the highest paid, if you're over sort of £75,000 or more, you're getting double what you get paid. And this is said is one of the most generous pension schemes in the country. Now, of course, for people to be pulling out of it is suggestive of this whole cost of living crisis, and it's a shame. You know, there is
the inability to think into the
long
future,
term,
which I certainly suffer from myself. You know, I think a lot of stand-ups.
But you know, when you have people who are going to be better off when they're retired than they are now and having to go to food banks, that's arguably not a good situation. But this is amazing how much they get money.
But these people can see the state of the NHS, and they think that they're not actually going to make it to retirement age.
I think there might be something to that. I think the police is the other one that gets an amazing pension of a similar thought. I think
it used to be the police used to be you get 2/3 of your final salary, and you'd retire after 30 years. So people would join age 16 and retire age 46 on 2/3 of their final salary, which would be a good salary, you know.
No country for old men. That's the subtext of the whole thing, isn't it? Just see out that last shift. Back to the Middle East now, Leah, with The Guardian. It's nice to know someone is benefiting from the atrocities.
So, yes, oil shares, Shell's shares have hit a record high as Israel-Hamas war drives up the oil price. So Brent crude has risen by more than 7% since the start of the war. So that's just in a week to more than $90 a barrel. And Shell's share price has gained 6.5% over the same period. I've actually got shares in Shell. Okay. So I'm hoping Iran invades. But this could be a real problem because Russia, we were getting a lot of hydrocarbons from Russia, oil and gas, and then other countries like Iran actually stepped in. You know, that's why Biden was doing these deals with Iran and giving them these billions and, you know, softening their relations. Qatar as well. We get a lot of gas from Qatar. So if this war does escalate into a wider, you know, regional, it doesn't have to be a wider regional conflict, but just, you know, if civilian casualties start piling up in Gaza, then the people in Qatar, the authorities in Qatar will be demanding that, you know, we stop providing gas to the West.
Because that's the interesting thing, isn't it? It's not like the war is going to take place in an oil field. You know, that's one of the things about Israel. It's not actually...
sympathetic countries.
Exactly,
Yeah, well, they're saying that it's not actually going to impact directly in terms of, like, as you say, the geography or whatever. But the fact is that a lot of this increase was already done from the 4th of October. The attacks happened on the 7th when OPEC and Saudi Arabia, Russia, they basically said they were going to cut the oil supply anyway. So things are already on the up before then.
Yeah, interesting. SNP Conference news now, Josh, in the Times. What currently feels like one of the less pressing issues of the day, but what's... talking to themselves.
SNP Conference, Nicola Sturgeon to attend as Humza Yousaf shifts strategy. I feel like I've seen the footage of her attending. I've seen. Have you seen it? I feel like I've seen her sitting. And it's not a joke. I thought.
It's one of these things where Cresta's going to walk in dressed as a.
Get that wig out.
It's going to put.
No, I just thought I'd seen some video footage, but as I'm scrolling down. So yeah,
she's attended previous years.
They're bringing. Maybe they're showing some footage from back then.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's sort of flying high at the moment in terms of she's just got £300,000 for.
I was going to say that was the figure that leapt out at me.
That's a lot of camper vans.
300 grand.
Yeah, and that's just the beginning. Yeah.
I mean, that's more than the SNP has got right now, isn't it? You know, this financial scandal.
Yeah, so
unbelievable. I wouldn't be surprised if she bribed the police to arrest her just to give us that
get that extra 100 grand or whatever. Yeah.
So she's got the kind of prison diary chapter.
Yeah, but I mean, the whole thing is moot because the whole thing is they've got a strategy now of getting to a place where they can begin immediate negotiations with the UK government. No. The UK government's like, yeah, can we have a meeting to have some negotiations? No, that's it. It's over.
They're on the way out for a generation now, I think, aren't they? I mean, it might well come back, but not for some. I don't think it'll be bothering headliners again for a while.
And it says something that they're so unpopular. They're bringing back Sturgeon to try and...
That's it for part 2. Coming up, we have terrorist popularity rankings, cancel culture, and playground pranks. That's right. It's the quickfire trivia round. See you shortly.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to ordinary people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners. We're on the back nine now. Daily Mail, Leo, and what I seriously hope is a genuine use of the word despite.
Yes, so 1 in 10 members of Generation Z or Generation Z, because it's in America, and young millennials have a positive view of Hamas, according to an exclusive poll I mean, to be honest, I'm amazed it's as low as 1 in 10, given that, you know, all young people are super woke and want to be seen as radical and, you know, glorify Islam and decolonisation and...
Well, they have, I suppose, again, to play the devil's advocate, they probably have a simplistic view of it as being supporting the underdog, right?
Yeah, and also, it's not... I mean, this isn't stupid people. This is the people at the top... So the Ivy League universities, Columbia, Harvard and Penn, they've had protests, pro-Palestinian, in some places, pro-Hamas protests, and released statements that have then been met with revulsion. I'm wondering if this is the thing that breaks wokeness, because wokeness started in the universities, and, you know, with critical race theory and gender ideology and communism and all this sort of stuff.
We're going to come on in a second to another story in which we talk about the sort of cancellation of people who've expressed completely unacceptable views. But I did notice that thing where it says, despite the group's murderous attack on Israel, and I do sincerely hope it is despite that, rather than that they've somehow been energised or activated by...
Well, they put out immediately, you know, pro-Hamas, saying that it's all Israel's fault, these reports. And, I mean, that means, and by the way, they're not supporting, like, the Palestinians. I support the Palestinians. I hope that they get their own country. But this is pro-Hamas.
We're doing it.
I know, I want it to be there. I want it to be in the territory. I want peace. But the fact that they're supporting... And I agree with you. This, I think, is a turning point because... Look, I'm on the left, but as far as I'm concerned, the far left, this has absolutely revealed them over the last week. How insidious they are, how embedded they are within different institutions, and predominantly in universities, how these ideas spread. And they need to be shamed for their opinions, they need to be exposed, and they need to be pushed further back into the fringes where they belong.
There is a theory, isn't there, that social media forces people to double down. It polarises, and then when you see something that would maybe make a sane person question their previous allegiances...
Although the thing that seems to be making these students change their mind is CEOs on Wall Street are saying, give me a list of these students, they're never getting hired. So there's a cost associated. And what's interesting is that so many of them have these fervently, deeply held beliefs that we support Hamas, and they instantly crumble as soon as there's a cost associated with it.
Well, let's have a look. There's a story of that kind in the Mail, Josh, one of the more justified instances of cancel culture, possibly.
Thousands signed petition to oust an Ivy League professor who praised Hamas. And board members at Columbia University, they're facing calls. They haven't done it yet.
Right.
But, you know, he's tenured. This guy called Joseph Massad. He's a history and politics lecturer. And he basically just came straight out and just wrote these absolutely ridiculous things as people were literally dying and whatnot. And this is what I was just saying before, is that these people are being exposed. We are seeing large funds, charity funds, withdraw their fund. We saw a letter, I think, was it to
Penn University?
And then suddenly
Huntsman or something, I think.
Huntsman,
of a wealthy family that have been
always given it to a big building with his name on it.
Millions and millions, huge amounts.
And suddenly, it turns out that the head of the university put out a letter. No, we support and we're anti-Hamas and we're this and that. It's too late. You have exposed yourselves.
Yeah. And also, what sort of belief is it if you just change it on a dime?
Well, presumably it was an echo chamber effect. I think they all
performative.
felt that exactly, that this would be the safe thing to say. And in fact, it turns out...
Exactly. But you see in the UK, it's similar. David Miller, who worked for Bristol University, it took so much work. The stuff that he was coming out with, he got a letter signed by hundreds of UK academics. But now he works for Iran TV, which is why I'm going after this. And he's pumping out this crazy stuff. Have any of those people pulled back their names? No. They need to be identified and shamed as well.
3 in a row for the Mail now, Leo, and it sounds like a school production of The Crucible has received some bad reviews.
So a male maths teacher at an all-girls grammar school wins £45,000 after being sacked over a playground plot where the pupils made up lies about him assaulting them. And they did it because, in their words, it was fun.
It was fun.
And I can imagine it was quite fun. So he's a former maths and computing teacher. This must have absolutely destroyed not just his professional life, but these accusations. These pupils, they wanted to end his career by alleging he had assaulted them by touching their thighs and massaging their shoulders. So, believe all women, but maybe not all women. Maybe sometimes you should question them a bit. And what didn't happen, the school didn't question any evidence, or they even ignored evidence from older girls. So older girls had been in the playground and heard these girls, other girls who accused him of this horrible stuff, they heard them saying, "Yeah, we're gonna get him because it's fun. Yeah, he touched our thighs. We're trying to get him done for sexual assault."
I mean, it's not even he said, she said. It's clearly there's specific witness evidence statements saying that they made it up, and they didn't even listen to them.
Yeah, it's terrible. He's got £45,000. That's not going to make up for what's happened to him.
If he's finished his career, it certainly is.
Well, he was suspended as his teacher. I believe it's now been reinstated. Yeah. But something like that
is just really hard, isn't it?
Traumatic. Who knows about the personal cost of that? Yeah. I mean, and these girls, what exactly has been? What's happened to them? I mean, what's their punishment?
I watched the Savile thing, that was on the BBC last week, and wrote a thing about it for Spite. And it's been quite interesting. I've noticed that some of the backwash from that is from people saying that this created a witch hunt because it drove everyone insane that they hadn't managed to catch Savile at the time. That this continues to this day. This was a real turning point, and that it's an incredibly powerful weapon now, which you can use exactly. It's like letting fireworks off.
So it's almost like the McPherson report. The Stephen Lawrence was such a egregious,
yes, exactly.
Justice.
That suddenly everybody is paralysed by him. Anyway, that's hopefully that chap is going to not just get his money, but I mean, I don't know, reset the clock.
Well, I think he should go and work in a boys' school.
Yeah. God, that would be a terrible... On a similar theme, Josh, and the top officer says the police have moved from ABC to ABC. Always believe children. Yeah, well, this ties into what we were just talking about. Police must believe child sexual abuse victims, but not blindly, says top officer. So it actually seems to be larger. Yeah, the scope is child sexual abuse, and specifically historical, because that's a good proportion of the cases. Yeah. And when they came forward, there was a thing where, yes, they would basically not believe them. Well, they had the ABC I liked it. Assume nothing, believe nothing, check everything.
So I think when they did that, and it was hard, when people are revealing some of the things that happened to them, and to be met with what seemed like indifference, I think skepticism. Yeah, exactly. And that stopped other people from coming forward, and maybe people withdrawing their accusations and whatnot. Then we saw things switch around, which was sort of accept everything, and it seems like now what they're talking about is to hold it into some balance, because of course you did have this Operation Midland and all these people investigating, and it turned out that it was all lies and whatnot. So there is an issue there that needs to be dealt with, and it sounds like now they're finally getting some sort of
I mean, if I recognise this chap obviously means well, but it's all he's essentially doing is hedging incredibly, isn't he? He's not saying anything useful. He's saying believe children, but not blindly. Well, what does that mean? Like, don't disbelieve them. Yeah. But I mean,
but with open eyes.
Yeah, it's very basic advice, isn't it? Allow it to be led by the evidence or whatever.
Yeah,
that's what he's saying.
You'd hope the police were all.
Yeah, exactly. It shouldn't be an innovation, should it?
Do your job, but don't do it.
Yeah, don't do it. Overdo it. Yeah. Pronoun news now, Leo. Not something I ever remember John Craven saying, but anyway, Saskatchewan are being controversial, according to The Guardian.
So Canada province uses constitutional override to advance pronoun legislation. This is the Canadian province of Saskatchewan.
I thought it was a gender.
It's, you know what, it probably is. They've got like two-spirit stuff and all that stuff. I thought it was a Bigfoot walking around in the woods. But they've invoked this rare constitutional mechanism to shield controversial gender pronoun legislation from legal challenges, a decision that critics say violates the rights of minors. So basically, at the moment, the Canadian government wants to allow teachers to let pupils transition at school and not tell the parents, which to my mind is like, I'm like, are you mad? Are you mad? Like, if my kid's doing anything, like, you've got to, they even say, like, so this is, apparently, you've got these parental rights activists, which are being sort of painted as sort of far right and all the rest of it, all the other good things. They say the rights parents have as the primary decision makers in their child's education. Who would say that parents shouldn't be the primary decision makers? I think
extraordinary, isn't it?
I've got a much better idea of what's best for my child than some blue-haired communist teacher.
And this is what The Guardian literally is calling controversial.
Because they're all blue-haired communists.
This is like some, again, innovation.
I'm gratified to see some fight back going on in Canada, because it's sort of the the wokest of the woke countries, and now parents are having to step into this, and that's the only way that this stuff is going to be ended, when normal people are just waking up to what's going on and having to take steps. We normally just trust our governments to just get on with this stuff and to be fair and whatnot. As you say, 100%. They're talking about children's rights. What about the parents' rights? It's ridiculous.
That's it for part 3. Coming up, we have Richard Curtis saying sorry for telling jokes. Sumo wrestlers say sorry for being overweight. New York Museum say sorry for displaying natural history. I'm sorry, but that's how it is. See you in a minute.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you. My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
And Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners for our final segment. So Josh Independent now, and Nepo baby and essay curator Scarlett Curtis has been scolding her father.
Indeed. Richard Curtis admits past portrayal of women was stupid and wrong. He's being interviewed by his daughter at the Cheltenham Literature Festival, and he said he admitted that rewatching Love Actually made him feel uncomfortable, and I just want to agree with him. Not for the same reasons, because it's rubbish.
All the rest of it. It's my family's favourite film. Every time I wonder,
so sorry.
Can they be mine? I mean, there were a couple of bits in it when I first watched it that I thought were OK, but it does feel icky to me now.
So mawkish.
I remember he got into a lot of trouble from Notting Hill for just being so middle class and white at the time, and at the time I was like,
but in that area in particular, it's like ridiculous.
I think to some extent he is probably guilty of some of these things.
But this idea of
the fat jokes, that's one of the good bits.
Well, he says fat jokes about women's weight aren't any longer funny. Like, his jokes about women's weight were never funny. He says, like, Renée Zellweger's got a bottom the size of Brazil. That's not funny.
Well, anyway, that's
from her book.
That was her book, exactly, written by a woman.
What, like
right?
women don't care about their appearance and their weight? I mean,
Bridget
come on.
Jones's Diary was a massive hit. It started off as a column in the Independent, I think. Then it was published as a book, and then it was made, and it was all written by a woman, and he just came in and tweaked it a little bit.
Yeah.
And also, his biggest hit, I think pretty much his biggest hit, was Dawn French as the Vicar of Dibley, right? Dawn French is literally a fat joke. That's what she is. She is a walking fat joke. She's lovely and funny, but that's how, that's what the joke is, right? That she makes. She had 20 years of being funny, get it? You know what I mean? Like John Candy. I mean, loads of people have made fun themselves out of this. Yeah. Curtis has just given them a tweak and a bit of fairy dust over it.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting, though, to know what her great-great-grandfather, Sigmund Freud, would make of all this.
Are you serious?
Yeah, he's married to Emma Freud, who was the great-granddaughter of Sigmund, yeah.
Not Dawn French.
No, sorry, Scarlett Curtis,
right.
Who is like an absolute classic. I'd never heard of her before, but I checked her Wikipedia out. She has curated 3 anthologies of other people's essays, for feminist essays for Penguin,
right,
and dyed her hair pink. Daily Mail now, Leo.
Is she fat?
And as if she's not, no, she's painfully thin. Oh. And as if the world is anti-Semitic enough at the moment, foreskin restoration surgery.
So, yeah, this is an exclusive, although I'm not sure who else would run it. Could foreskin regeneration be the making of the next medical millionaire? Scientists developed the technique to regrow penis skin in a lab, as 40% of circumcised men say they were too young to consent. So they can grow penis skin. I just want to know if it has to go in the penis. Can I get a snood?
Of the nose, like a proboscis monkey. Oh, yeah. That's one way to keep the thermostat down.
Yeah. Halloween parties, I could spit milk out of it. But yeah. It's interesting. They can. I mean, it's amazing what they can do, because at the moment they've got surgical reattachment where they take skin from another part of your body and attach it to the penis to make it. I don't know why anybody would want to do this, but it doesn't look the same.
Yeah, it doesn't add any extra sensation or whatnot. But at the moment they're doing phase 2 trials. They're taking foreskins donated from deceased men. That is,
I don't want one of them.
And then they're recolonising them with rat cells.
What?
Oh, I think I'm just going to stay Jewish, if that's all right.
This makes Frankenstein.
Frankenstein.
What if you get one off like some terrible sex attacker? And I've seen that film. I've seen that film where it starts,
I'm sure there used to be lots of old filthy jokes where somebody has a skin graft from a foreskin and there's a consequence, like the arm goes up. I can't remember.
I think it was a murderer or something. They get like a spare pair of hands or something,
Anyway, Sumo News now, Josh, in the Times. Japan Airlines say they have concerns that Scarlett Curtis wouldn't find very funny.
Oh,
certainly.
Indeed, yeah, no, there'll be no Curtis films about this one.
No sniggery.
Sumo wrestlers present a weighty problem for Japan Airlines because Japanese tend to be quite in shape. Not just small, but also, with a low body mass index or whatever you want to call it. Healthy diet.
Yes.
Rice and whatnot. Exactly. 70 kilograms, whereas on average, sumo wrestlers about 120 kilograms. They saw that they had a whole plane booked, and they kind of freaked out. And they were like, we need 2 planes because they're not going to be able to carry enough fuel, and it's a short.
But on the upside, sumo wrestlers probably don't have much baggage, do they? Little roll-up mat,
You think it's sort of monastic? They're like pop stars in Japan, so they know they might have a lot of, and they've got bigger bags, bigger clothes.
Japan Airlines, I've not flown Japan Airlines, but their seats are the same size as regular airlines, right? They don't have tiny.
Well, it depends if they build them there or if they build them. No, they might be smaller.
They might be, yeah.
Well,
Leo, have you flown? You must struggle in economy anyway, do you?
Yeah, in Southeast Asia is a nightmare in economy. It's brutal. It's a couple of inches shorter.
Is it on planes? I remember travelling around there by bus a lot, like in my hitchhiking days, and it was ridiculous. Like long journey, like 5 hours up the length of Thailand with your knees under your chin.
Condom sizes are different.
Yes.
But for me, it didn't matter.
Snood sizes. So, the Express now, Leo. Human remains removed from prestigious New York address as scandal grows around previous occupants.
So a top museum has removed human bodies from a display after a woke backlash against exhibitions. So this is the president of the American Museum of Natural History, which is a collection of about 12,000 human remains, which seems like a lot.
That is a lot.
That's a lot of foreskins.
That's a lot, yeah. And it includes skeletons from indigenous and enslaved people, as well as bodies of New Yorkers collected as recently as the 1940s. So, I mean, if it's indigenous and enslaved people, it's not people who signed a consent form to be in a museum.
So that's the issue. And also, reading between the lines, it sounds like some of these artefacts were in displays which discussed how these people were small, or their cranial capacity suggested a low...
Like you just did with Japanese people.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But I think that was the nature of it, right? It was what they might call human biodiversity, which amounts to racism, essentially.
Right.
Yeah, it's weird to think that stuff's on display now. Is it that it's actually on display to the public?
It's gone now.
Or is it more that it was... No, but even up to recently.
Oh, okay.
Or is it stuff that is just they held on to... That was displayed in the past.
I think they're saying that these artefacts were part of a scientific racism, when that kind of mindset held sway, and so they're tainted by that. But it is a shame. I don't know whether they're being chucked into a skip or whether they're just being quiet.
Don't chuck them into a skip. They'll be like, oh, you'll be happy with this, woke people. We're chucking it in a skip out the back.
Don't worry.
No, they've donated them to the British Museum, so they're going to be sold on eBay.
That'll be interesting to bid for those. I remember a fella dying and bequeathing his skull to the Royal Shakespeare Company. He wanted to play Yorick in future productions of Hamlet, and he did for a while, and then the actors got freaked out by it and demanded that they replace it with a plastic one. Finally, Josh, The Mirror. First wrestling, now BBC Wildlife is fixed. What next, Strictly?
Exactly. What can we believe anymore? Surely we all knew this. BBC's Hamza Yassin admits some wildlife scenes are faked to gain viewers' sympathy.
Yeah.
And I think we all kind of knew that. I mean, they've got to be careful about how they do it. They do it subtly with the editing a little bit, but also what they show.
Yes.
And then they can sort of pull back and everything's good and it's bad and it's...
Quite often what you see is like a chase sequence, isn't it? And then the thing gets away at the last minute and you think, oh, thank goodness. Yeah. But most of us pause at some point and go, on the other hand, sometimes... He's going to have to catch one of those, or the snow leopard will be extinct for the sake of a rabbit, and I don't think that would be a good outcome.
Yeah, and they don't go into a real burrow. They'll have a burrow, a vivarium that they can film through the side of, and all the rest of it.
Vivarium? Did you just throw that in as if it was like just like one of your regular daily words?
What you keep gerbils in.
Is that right? Vivarium, nice. Yeah.
Or a gerbilarium.
But some of them impose more absurdly, sophisticated narratives than others, don't they? Do you know what I mean? There's a little scuff.
Like Lassie.
Yeah. Anyway, it's been a wonderful show this evening. I'm very grateful to my guests. It is nearly over, so let's take another quick look at Tuesday's front pages. So, we kick off with the Daily Mail. Violent prisoners to be let out early. The Guardian, Gaza humanitarian crisis grows as US bid to ease blockade falters. Financial Times, US-led push to open Gaza crossing falters as Biden weighs Israel visit. The Times, teenage sisters among Britons missing in Gaza. The Mirror, invaders will face tunnel bloodbath. And the Daily Star, let's have a heated debate about the old thermostat. Well, those were your front pages. That's all we have time for. Thank you to my guests, Josh Howie and Leo Kearse. I'll be back tomorrow with Lewis Schaefer and Adam Bloom, so that is bound to be somewhat chaotic. If you're watching at 5 a.m, stay tuned for breakfast. Otherwise, thank you very much for your company. See you again soon. Good night.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you. My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6